Hello, hello, and welcome to another podcast episode of Overpowering Emotions, where I talk all things big emotions, emotion regulation. Today, I'm still talking about emotion regulation and something that maybe we take for granted and don't think a lot about, but can be really powerful for emotion regulation and well-being, and that's really touch. Touch and social connection, right? Oftentimes, the emotional dysregulation and fear and things like even anger, it comes up because we're feeling disconnected. But I think that it's important to think beyond the words that we use to communicate. I know that we think about that. That's the main way that we do communicate and connect, but our bodies have a language of their own as well. We are wired for touch. From the moment we're born, touch is our first language. Babies rely on that skin to skin contact for survival. It regulates their heart rate, their breathing, their stress levels, right? But it's not just babies. We all need touch. This is really important. And when we experience an affectionate touch, it could be a hug, it could be a hand on the shoulder, holding hands. Our bodies release oxytocin. That's the bonding hormone. It lowers cortisol. And so cortisol, that's going to help reduce stress and anxiety. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which just helps calm us down. People who get regular family physical touch, like from family members, it could be from friends, it could be from pets even, they have generally lower levels of depression, anxiety, and stress. Kids who experience that affectionate, safe touch, they learn to regulate their emotions more effectively. They are feeling safe, they feel secure, they feel emotionally connected, which really sets the foundation for healthy relationships as well. So think about a time when someone gave you like a real genuine hug, right? Especially if you were having a tough day. How did that make you feel? It's not just nice. It doesn't just, feel nice and feel good. Truly, it's biologically powerful. I think we're deprived of touch, right? There's a lot of touch that I don't like, I will say, but a big, genuine, full body hug from my daughter. Oh, my youngest daughter just gives the best hugs. It doesn't matter how stressful my day is, right? She's really showing her love. There's no words communicated, but there's nothing else in the world that can make me feel the same sort of way. So that's really important for us to think about. Now, affectionate touch and what's true for one person might be different for another person. So we really need to understand, what those things are. And with the hugs too, like I always talk about, we call them Mississippi hugs, which I'll talk about in a second. But affectionate touch, it's just so important for our own emotional well-being, but it's really important too in relationships. It builds trust, it builds that emotional safety, it signals care and connection without needing any words. And this is really important. We know when it comes to emotion regulation or even behavior management, that relationship piece. I'm always talking less, right? And so I would add in, instead of talking, let's touch more. This is why dads often respond very differently to kids than mothers, because they usually are more physical than they are verbal, right? Not always, but we generally see that trend. But that touch helps us regulate any emotion, anger, frustration, sadness. So on sports teams, we see, that people who touch more on sports teams, so high fives, pats on the backs, fist pumps, they tend to perform better. Again, it's because touch builds trust, it builds cooperation, it builds that social cohesion, which is really important. So think about how can we use this with kids? I love the story. I know I've shared it before about this principal, Michael Unger. He's a resilience researcher in Dalhousie. He went to Colombia in, I believe it was the 80s, right? Where there's lots of gunfire, all of the drug wars that are going on. But there was a principal in Colombia where she used touch, where kids really felt like they belong. So they were willing, and their parents were willing to send these kids to school, even though there's active gunfire going on, right? Because they felt so connected. They felt safe. They loved their principal so much. And she literally, every morning, kids would come up to her and she would hug every single one of them. I believe she kissed them on the forehead and, patted them on the rump as they kind of went in. We need to be careful. Maybe we can't pat them on the rump, but why can't we hug our kids, our students as they're coming into that school? Touch, or maybe just touching, their back as they come in, or giving them fist pump. One of the videos that I often share is a teacher greeting their students at the door. And it could be a hug, it could be a fist pump, it could be, a secret handshake. Every child sort of develops their own greeting with the teacher, but touch is a big piece of it. The teacher's not saying anything, it's that physical interaction that really makes kids feel connected, right? So a reassuring hand on the shoulder, that high five if they accomplish something. It doesn't have to be just when we greet. It's all of these different, times, interactions that we can have. If they're upset, just sitting close to them, that can be so powerful. We don't need to say anything. We're just sitting close to them, being there in that space. So that touch, it should always be used for connection, not discipline, not correction. It should only be used for connection and emotional regulation, right? When we look at the science of touch, it's really fascinating. We know touch literally changes the brain. Like I said, it increases the oxytocin, right? It increases the social connection through that oxytocin. It's decreasing the cortisol, like I said, that reduces the stress and anxiety. It activates the vagus nerve, which actually slows the heart rate. It promotes that relaxation. So with kids, we know that that affectionate touch helps regulating their emotions. We see less tantrums, more emotional stability. It's building that secure attachment, making them feel safe and trusting in the relationship. It increases confidence because now they're feeling supported. And it's good for us too, right? When we receive multiple hugs a day, adults actually report higher levels of happiness. And again, I'll come back now to those Mississippi hugs in my house. That's a rule, 6 Mississippis. So we have to hug for at least 6 Mississippis, right? My parents or my kids will be like, 6 seconds, but they actually really do love it. And you can feel them sink into it, even if they didn't initially want it. But holding hands, even for 10 seconds, that lowers blood pressure. Massage therapy, it can reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety. I'm not finding much, therapeutic value in terms of the physical piece of massage, but it's really helpful just to get some of that added touch, right? To decrease depression, anxiety. So it's not about the relaxation and comfort. Any touch is really a biological necessity for emotional well-being, right? So look at how can you use hugs as emotional resets? Hug your kids before they leave school and whenever they come home, or, if you're an educator or even if you're a clinician, how can you use touch when you're greeting kids, right? When you're leaving, I'm always giving a fist pump, a high five. Some kids do want to come hug, right? My own kids, as a mother, every time they walk into the room, even if they were just there and went to the bathroom and came back, I am, Maya, and then I'll grab her and we have this, the 6 Mississippi rule for the hug. And she's like, I was just here. They're frustrated, but they do it. And the times when I might not do it, I can tell they're like waiting for their hug. Um, so just being proactive through the day, lots of those hugs, but you can also hug after an emotional outburst to reconnect and soothe. Maybe not in the middle of an emotional outburst. We just want to be there close in proximity, but that's another time afterwards. We can validate their feeling and, the tough time that they're having. We can also hug before bed. That's going to help with relaxation and sleep. Again, high fives, fist pumps, if kids don't like hugs, anything that is still going to sort of fulfill the same sort of thing that builds a sense of accomplishment, that builds connection, that's going to be really important. Those are great for classroom settings, sports settings, clinical settings, right? Those types of things. But again, even just a hand on the shoulder or, the back, that's a really reassuring touch. So maybe when they're nervous or struggling, we can acknowledge and validate and show that we're there to support them, but also show confidence on the other hand that, they're going to handle it. But that builds trust without being overwhelming and without talking and being in their face. Eye contact and presence is part of this too. Sometimes being fully present is just as powerful as some of that touch, leaning in, sometimes making eye contact, but oftentimes I find, especially if they're emotionally dysregulated, sitting next to them is actually better. So we don't have that necessarily direct eye contact, which can be overwhelming, but sometimes just, in the right moment when they are like looking for that accomplishment and connection, that eye contact can just show warmth and create some of that emotional safety. So the challenge this week, Hopefully, you're taking on some of these challenges. The challenge this week is increasing physical touch. Maybe it's giving an extra hug or a high five or a reassuring touch every day. Just notice how that changes your connection. Be proactive. Don't wait for emotional upset. Be proactive. How can you start incorporating a little bit more touch? And observe and adjust. If they, get rigid, well, at first they might, because this is weird. What are you doing? Right? They still might, but adjust is needed. How are they responding to touch? Maybe you're going to experiment every day, like a little, what do they seem more receptive to? Are they pulling away? Are they responding and smiling? Really respect their comfort level. You can even ask them, right? Just find the key is just finding small ways to connect. And think too, how does it affect you? We're going to watch their responses, but how does it affect you? Because touch benefits you too. So if you're feeling I could see the value in this and I might enjoy it, then maybe keep trying it. But if you're like, no, that's weird, I hate it, then don't keep trying that, right? But I do want you to try. Touch really is such a powerful way to regulate those emotions, to build that connection. And those are the two key pieces, right? That we really are that are going to help everything with learning and behavior management and everything else. So it's a natural, really easy way to boost that mental, emotional well-being. So I'll leave it there for today. Do go try, do go experiment. If you have found this episode helpful, definitely share with others. Rate me on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Help those kiddos be bold and courageous, and I will see you next time.